been vying for the position of that time. Please shed more light. What happens with those candidates? Are they still being considered if the convention is held after we put to rest the sixth Republican president? And how far are we as far as resolving these issues with this faction being led by Mr. Robert Chavinga, Honorable Robert Chavinga?
Well, first of all, let me maybe start with the only question.
Yes.
The issues to do with factions is neither here nor there. First of all, to even consider Chavinga as a faction leader is being mischievous. We had a situation where Honorable Mausampa held what he called a conference, which basically was not in line with the provision of the Constitution. And it was disturbed that it was basically dead on delivery from the onset. To that effect, outside the involvement and interference of the state in relation to that sham conference, all these matters will not even be a matter to even talk about at this particular stage. The good thing is that Honorable Mausampa himself realized that what he did was not correct, it was wrong, it was injurious not only to the party, but also to democracy. And we've been able to engage to a place where we reconciled and even went before court and deposited our intention to have this matter resolved by way of consent. Of course, there was an attempt by Chavinga to try and join the matter, but first of all, we are all intelligent enough, including the listeners. Chavinga was not even part of that conference. He was just at some point some appointee of Mausampa by way of him being appointed as leader of opposition and so on. And when themselves differed, he with the support of the state and the president, he pronounced himself president. I don't think we're in a society where due process and all those things are required.
When you say support of the president and state, what do you mean? How does that come in? How is he being supported?
It's in public domain. Chavinga has been trotting around the country with the President Hakainde, even given a podium to pronounce himself as PF president. At some point they were in Kasama, where the president was even telling him, on camera, that Kukwasa so just proceed and do what you are doing, even when he knew and he knows that what Chavinga is doing is illegal, it is criminal, and it should not be tolerated. And of course, we warned him that when you are dealing with society misfits, you have to prepare yourself to also face the consequences. Today, he's facing the consequence of the fact that he has been implicated in some criminal activities that Chavinga has self-confessed. He was assigned to go undertake in South Africa, and you have heard some pronouncement he has made through a press briefing and so on. So, Mr. Hakainde, through these shenanigans and the mingaratos he has been doing, all he has done is to smear himself with debt, if not West. And he's basically smelling the as they say on the street, the pungent of playing with the society misfits. So to even make Chavinga a subject by saying that he's a faction leader, Chavinga is a tool of a criminal enterprise of UPND, nothing else. The Zambian people know that there is no such thing as a faction. Nevertheless, we are magnanimous enough as Patriotic Front to say, let's all these matters be resolved. We would love that the court, pronounces itself, because this question has been raised and we have even written letters to the Chief Justice to say, can you prioritize these issues, matters of Patriotic Front, being the main opposition in the interest of democracy? Answers have not yet come. The courts have not yet moved. But we are also alive to the fact that, okay, if they cannot be resolved through the judicial process, we're going then to resolve this issue through a democratic process. So we'd want Chavinga and everybody else who claims to be PF to participate in the process of us going to the conference, so that let the members and the people of Zambia be the ones that will speak on the kind of leadership that should, emerge and be in PF as the main opposition. So we are preparing going towards the conference, one, to also resolve this perception of factions, but also to be able to give the membership across the country an opportunity to have a say in who should be their leader.
What happens to those people that had paid those 200,000?
So they remember that when we lost elections, President Edgar Chagolungu went on sabbatical leave, and he opted that a process should, be initiated towards choosing a leader that would take over from him. As we were, considering all options and the method through which we can raise funds and put certain things in place towards holding the conference, the call for him to come back to active politics was increasing by the day, by every month that passed, and so on. And because we are a people-driven movement, this PF is not about the leaders. PF is about a movement of the people. Way from the time PF was founded by Mr. Michael Chukwu Lelet, through to the time that PF formed the government, has been a people's movement. So the pronouncement of the people are the ones basically that dictate the direction that the PF takes. That's how come the issue of going to a conference for us is a must, because the people must be able to dictate who their leader should be. And when the people pronounce themselves effectively around, former president coming to also participate within the collective, to be able to answer to some of the challenges that are emerged. One of them that I think blew the lead for him to say, I'm coming, I'll respond to what the people are asking, was basically the interference of the state in the affairs of Patriotic Front, allowing basically a coup d'etat protected by the state, police, released, the changing of office bearers done overnight. When the Registrar of Society registrar decided to follow the provision of the Constitution and said, no, we cannot change, the list of, office bearers in the fashion that, the state is demanding, because that would be illegal. She was booted out. We all know about this. Ms. Mende lost her job on the basis of the fact that UPND, through state apparatus and cadres that are appointed in government, began to interfere with the leadership of Patriotic Front. That triggered the former president to see that the effort by the UPND in government to kill democracy and destroy opposition political parties, where the level of determination was alarming, and therefore it needed concerted effort. So when he came on the scene, those of our colleagues who had expressed interest to be considered for leadership, they, of course, agreed and succumbed to the fact that the legitimate leader at the time, before the next conference, which was scheduled for 2026, was President Edgar Chagolungu. So they held their horses, and by consensus, discussions were held within the party, and they said, no, for us, we paid just as an expression of interest, and therefore now that the president has come back, we're already behind him. At this particular stage that he has passed on, these are people who were brave enough to express their interest to lead the party. So we cannot just ignore. They have been known that they are desirous to lead the party. And obviously they will be part of those that will be given an opportunity to pursue their ambition or offer, if you like. But I can just state that it will not be restricted to those who had paid at the time. Because obviously over time some people may have also felt that maybe I have some, something I can offer to the party and to the nation. And the search for national leadership, I don't think it is one that we can just, exclusively restrict to just a few individuals. I think the Zambian people, looking at how the UPND have treated them, they are looking for a leadership that at arriving at that particular leader, due diligence has been undertaken. We will not allow a process that, for example, is driven by slogans, that is driven by corruption in terms of money, trying to posture and manipulate people. We are going to have a process that will also scrutinize the kind of leader that eventually will offer to Zambian people. So that when we get into government, and I'm using deliberate word, when we get into government, we shouldn't cry that we have shot ourselves in the foot. We should have done everything required, leaving no stone unturned, and make sure that the light.
What do you mean when you say all that, Mr. Nakacinda, as far as scrutinizing and making sure that the list of people that are interested are well looked into? And I ask this because last time the PF lost a president, there was some sort of confusion, there was chaos. Again, we were at a point where there was one faction that wanted this person to lead, there was another faction that wanted that other person to lead. How do you avoid a similar situation, seeing that now there's another looming convention with a lot of potentially a lot of interested parties here?
I don't know why you love the word factions. We may have to increase our vocabulary around these issues. You know, when there is a competition for leadership, obviously in a group, there will be people who clearly will say, my preferred candidate is this one. That's not a faction. It's a democratic right of every member of Patriotic Front at an appropriate time to be able to say, this is my choice. And when they decide to start campaigning for that particular person, you can't call it faction. And you can't call it confusion, unless you don't understand what democracy is.
Is it democratic to have two separate conventions and have a different decision decided, and then there was another one that had to take place that was stopped by the courts, and then for you to get to a final decision to have Edgar Lungu as president? That's what I'm referring to. So when you're saying I'm being very somewhat shallow with my vocabulary, with how I'm describing the events of the past.
My brother,
I think we need to
be honest with each other. Are you paying attention to the questions you're asking?
Yes.
You asked me a question about Mao Sampande, Chaving and so on, I answered.
Yes.
Then you asked me a question to do with the process that was initiated just after the elections and people offered themselves for presidency, and that they seem to have been groupings of people saying this one should lead, another one should lead. Those are not factions.
I think you misunderstood what I was asking you. I asked you that question, and out of the backdrop, I referenced the time the other president died, who is Michael Sata.
Oh,
when Michael Sata died, that's where we are.
Right. Okay.
So I think that's where we have a misunderstanding here. Now that you understand my question, please go ahead and respond to it.
Even that in itself.
Yes.
Okay. They were, you may call them factions, but there were people who expressed a desire to lead the party at that particular point. They were robust. There were, all kinds of, happenings. But the major aspect, if you were to analyze, that came to the fore was the fact that there was a vice president who was not left to act as president. And then there was a debate within this government, the state apparatus, particularly the Office of Attorney General, who gave an opinion that the acting president at the time, who happened to have been Edgar Lungu, who was Minister of Defense and Minister of Justice, needed to hand over the instruments of power. It is that component that ushered in now seemingly some power play, okay? But when it came to issues of selection, the suspension of the then Secretary General Edgar Lungu and some of those maneuvers are the ones that seem to have ushered in what seemed to have been confusion. But otherwise, in a democratic society and in a democratic institution, when there is a process towards electing a leader, you cannot stifle members at a particular time, especially when the conference date is announced and the date of campaign is announced and people are campaigning. You can't stifle members from expressing themselves that I prefer this one because I think they have these qualities that will help the party moving forward. So if we were to speak to those issues, there are many factors which may require a single program for us to discuss to benefit from that history, and I appreciate the fact that you asked, to benefit from that history so that some mistakes that were made during that time are not repeated moving forward. I can only assure you that privately, as a party, we have looked at all those factors. We have even looked at the issues to do with the happenings after the loss in 2021, and we have drawn lessons. And we are marching towards, this conference and towards 2026, wiser than we may have been before these things have happened.
Mr. Nakacinda, when are we possibly going to have this conference?
Well, I don't think it's in my place to be able to preempt decisions that have to be made by Central Committee. But I can only tell you that Central Committee met, and one of the things that we deliberated was the fact that we have a funeral. We haven't even put to rest our leader, and to that effect, in detail, the issues of the inevitable holding of the conference will be discussed, and I think parameters and everything will be put in place by Central Committee.
I want to get your comment on incidents that happened last week. We saw PF faction President Robert Chabinga, who threatened to deal with PF faction leader Given Lubinda, and the leaked audio, which has also gone viral. He issued some threats when he made that presser. What's your comment to that? What's your reaction to Mr. Chabinga's press conference and the threats he made to Honorable Lubinda and Sishua as well?
Well, I think it just confirms the criminality that Chabinga is involved in, supported, if not sponsored, by his own claim, the state and the president. The UPND, who have also been trying to exonerate him and cleanse him and want to even turn what is obvious to suggest that this is an AI, orchestrated audio and all the nonsense that Zambian people have been subjected to. But this is basically a confirmation. The question I was expecting from you was to say, now it looks like this confirms the criminality that Chabinga is involved in, sponsored by the state and the UPND. Because he himself has put it on record. Nobody in UPND has disputed that. Everybody in UPND from top to bottom, including State House, have disputed that that's not an original audio. It is the Zambian people who have analyzed, and with today's technological advancement, people have been able to also engage technological in terms of IT to be able to establish that that is an original audio. It should worry you and worry Zambians that the entire head of state would be mentioned to have participated in a process of wanting to bribe judges. You understand? To have a society misfit like this boy called Chabinga sent to South Africa during such a very solemn moment where we are mourning a former head of state. There could be issues that are still to be resolved around the burial and all that. That's a separate issue. But to engage into criminal activities, including going to mobilize surrogates and so on to disparage the Lungu family and President Lungu in his death, it's an Zambian. It's unheard of. And then the president is parading himself here when stakeholders go to meet him that I haven't been moving because I'm mourning. What kind of mourning is this? Where, going by his own words, he says he's an head of the church. I listened to an audio this morning where he was saying to the ones who were swearing in, I think one of them is an ambassador to Brazil, that we need to be genuine Christians who does correct things during the day and also correct things in the night. Not Christians who do certain things during the day and does evil things during the night. Mr. President, can you speak to us Zambians over your purported assigning Chabinga to South Africa to do the activities that have been reviewed in that audio? To a point where he was expressing that as a head of state, you are so desperate that you called him in the night 12 times.
I want to play an audio for you, Mr. Nakacinda, from State House, since you brought it up regarding State House and their stance. We heard from Mr. Clayson Hamasaka. Let me just play back an audio for you, his response to the audio, and I would like you to respond to it since we're talking about the audio now.
Go ahead.
So this was Mr. Clayson Hamasaka's response to the audio and the allegations of Mr. Chabinga being called 12 times by the president. I'll just play back again because Mr. Nakacinda was wearing his headphones.
from what we normally see, there are so many development programs that are going on everywhere, but people concentrate on the no, the region there, no, this is what you're there.
What's your response to that?
My response is that this is pure playing to the gallery. He's saying that he can't talk to the the genuineness of the audio, but that whatever is said there, none, happened. This is Hamasaka, and the phone calls were after midnight 02. Hamasaka was sleeping at his house. You understand what I'm saying? He can't speak authoritatively to matters that happened after midnight. He knocks off at a particular time. Our working hours in Zambia is 8 hours for those who are formally employed. So from morning to 17, if he has been stretched, maybe he can go to 20, 21. After midnight, what we know in Zambia is that in Wakaziz, Wamina is after midnight. And you know when I use the word Wakaziz, after midnight is a superstition. You're expected to finish your business formally at a particular time. But the boy said, I was cold, I was even sleeping. I woke up maybe in the phone tunda. Then I'm 12 missed calls were president. 30 missed calls were Friday, the DG. Just those allegations are too grave for us to start debating a guy who has been called on the phone and says, I can't confirm, and I can tell you that what he has alleged is not true. Okay? By now, Chabinga, if the UPND, the way we know them, and Misaka in the HRM, if they were not involved, Chabinga would have been in sales. Small boys have just said things which are not as grave as what Chabinga said over the president have been picked up and thrown in jail. Some of them have disappeared and we don't know where they are. For doing what? For saying things that are considered insults towards an elder person. Though the law does not define what you can say an insult and so on, because some of the things we say in Bemba, in Tonga, and so on, they may not really in our culture be an insult. You have heard the president himself, speak. One time he was at a rally in Kasama. We condemned because we thought that, he's trying to get into, speaking a language whose culture he may not fully comprehend, and therefore he may make a mistake. We have people like Kapwepwe, this boy, Waimi, that everybody is talking about. Where is he? He is not only been arrested, but he has disappeared. For doing what? For saying things that people considered uncouth. But this man has implicated the president in criminality and is exonerated by a phone call between you and the Hamasaka. And all of us Zambia should take that story as something that should just pass by that statement. The president is being put at the center of the criminal activities of Chabinga, and he must answer for himself. Nobody can answer for him over a phone call between him and the Chabinga. Unless Hamasaka says that when the president is making a phone call, they hold the phone together. He is this side listening to what the other one is saying and what he is saying. If that is the approach, yes. Meaning that Hamasaka wakatuma phone wa president, wamagwira phone pamoja na eve. But the boy said, anantumina phone a president. After that, wantumina nuzati, utumine na DG wa intelligence, Friday nyambi. And that's how that assignment was given. And then he further went to say, wananuza utitika kumane mairo. But later on they said, no, it cannot wait for tomorrow. You were looking for flights. And in the end, they checked on the manifest. They found that South African Airways, which was leaving early in the morning, had too many PF members. That's how he ended up in an Airlink. In the Airlink plane, when he went there, he says, Inari Sangaba, PF, Abengi, Katoto, Shanshan, and so on. And that whole has been confirmed. So, in this case, we have even passed the stage of whether the audio is genuine or not. We are at the stage of the fact that the president is at the center of this criminality. You understand? And we can't have the presidency involved in criminal acts. You understand what I'm saying? It's an abomination.
Speaking of criminal acts, Chivuli MP, Honorable Mulenga Fube, has reported Mafinga MP, Honorable Robert Chabinga, to the police for threatening violence against Emmanuel Mwamba and historian Dr. Sishua. Do you think the police are going to summon Chabinga?
before all these people came to report, that very day when the audio came out, because I've challenged the police, the IG and the other senior officers at Central Police, when they call me for all these stupid charges they give us called seditious practice. Last time I was being called to the police to exonerate myself over an audio, an interview I had in South Africa over our late president. And there were discussions between the state and the family, and the party was involved. And in the discussion, when we were trying to look at the possibilities of this process of burial, the family raised an issue of the fact that considering, undertaking a postmortem. And that was expressed. And then I'm being summoned at the police. So I asked them, I said, how come you have the audacity to call me for a conversation that I held on a TV station in South Africa, but you never arrest any UPND person when they actually commit direct offenses? For me, I am in court, one of the cases, where I was arrested without anybody complaining. I was kept for 13 days, 2 days in Westwood, about 11 days at Lusaka Central Police. During that time, as it has been reviewed in court, that is when they went and fished out some surrogates of UPND to be listed as those who reported dates or days after being arrested. How come Chawinga, even when there has been 6-7 people who have reported, I can confirm our MCC Kibombwe, with, of course, President Wright Musoma, went to Central Police, to the DCIO. The reception they received there was like a reception from a UPND cadre. You understand? From a UPND cadre. And further, letters were written. Yesterday, we had people, of course, now because this has become a national matter, we got reports that in Central Province in Kabwe, there are people that reported Chawinga. But Chawinga is still boasting, telling everybody. He even orders the police, I'm going to undertake aggravated robbery against senior PF members, because in his whatever mind, they have planted an idea that there is money somewhere roaming within PF. And therefore, I'm going to undertake an aggravated robbery. Police stay away. And the police are complicit to it. You understand? IG Musamba, we have already said from before, this man is tired and retired. He will not help, not only to ensure that the rule of law prevails, but because he's a UPND cadre, he will usher this country into chaos. We have warned Mr. Indechinema several times that let's not take advantage of the Zambian people and their desire and passion for peace. Other jurisdictional countries that have ended up in chaotic situations, they were also peaceful, but they were stretched, because the moment the rule of law does not prevail or is selectively applied, it renders those who feel oppressed to start thinking it's like, survival of the fittest. If all of us are equal before the law, when we go before court, you know that if I was unlawfully arrested by the police, at least I'll have justice before the court. That confidence from the opposition especially, and many Zambians, we don't have. When you go in a court, you even know that I've been brought now to the slaughter. This magistrate, we know him. Because we live in the same society. We live in the same society. We know each other. We live in the same neighborhood. With the judges, we live in the same neighborhoods with magistrate, and we know affiliations. The only thing that will make this country sane is that sacred institutions like the judiciary must be paged of any attempt to have in the state interfere with his operation.
I want us to...
because that's the conscience of our society. If the conscience of our society is soiled by what now is happening in this country, how is it that we are going to have a situation where cases that involves leaders of PF are adjudicated upon with supersonic speed towards jail. But a PF matter that has to do with the institution, it has taken over 3 years without being attended to. What's going on? I mean, unless we were taken for a ride, all of us.
Mr. Nakacinda, still on the issue to do with the audio. The same audio has been submitted before the South African court by the Edgar Lungu family lawyer. How do you think this will do to the diplomatic relations between Zambia and South Africa?
Well, I think the family took the matter before court because that is highly contemptuous. There are, allegations and proposals of wanting the judge presiding over the matter to be bribed and all those things. I think to protect the integrity of that process, the court needed to be made aware that the family is, perturbed by the fact that there could even be room for a judge to be bribed. There could even be somebody have the courage to say the judge needs to be bribed. If we give the money, they'll make a decision in our favor. Now, when it comes to diplomatic relations, Misaka Indechilema has failed in the region. We all can see, I think there's even been reports that he's making efforts to try and, clean up the diplomatic relationship with Zimbabwe. At some point, we had even reckless reports of foreign affairs minister going to Zimbabwe, carrying their own water, their own snacks, and all those things because they can't trust Zimbabwe. Blatant, scandalous, behavior that will not help in making the relationship better. With South Africa, Chabinga's audio, not only that, even the engagement over the funeral of President Edgar Chagarongo. I think better public pronouncements and engagement would have been handled in such a way that even this impasse will not reach where it is. On the diplomatic front, Mr. Ika Ndechilema has failed. Today we are being threatened by America in relation to our travel. There is a threat that Zambians will not be allowed, to have visas more than 3 months, and maybe even put a travel ban on Zambians. Where is it coming from? It's not only coming from issues of corruption. It's also coming from the fact that diplomatically our engagements may not be sound. Zambia has been a shining light from 1964.
You've given us 2 examples of relationships that might have been not handled well in the region, Zimbabwe, and now there's this issue to do with South Africa. Which other country would you cite besides these 2? Are you rating his failure to have a diplomatic relationship with our neighbors beyond that? And obviously with the Americans, we've seen the shift in what's going on with the Trump administration. There's so many countries that have been put on that list. Don't you think you're judging them harshly when it comes to the American issue?
First of all, we should not have even featured. Zambia, as you know, you have grown up in a country that has remained a shining light and respected globally in relation to our diplomatic engagement and also our championing of peace and so on. We were never a subject of having challenges with our neighbors or any other country. Remember that from the early years after independence, President Kaunda started championing a policy which now became a continental policy, the non-aligned movement, you remember? To make sure that we're friends with everybody. To have, for example, the foreign minister or international relations minister of South Africa sued by a government over a matter of the burial of President Edgar Chagarongo. It's a diplomatic blunder. You understand? He was sent by President Cyril Ramaphosa to Zambia to engage the president. You know what happened? on assumption the president wanted to play to the gallery. And he called media houses to State House, private and the public media houses. And when the message, which was supposed to be confidential, was being shared, we are told that it's private media and everybody was chased from State House. And they tried to now make as it were, play to the gallery by creating an impression that the government of South Africa had come to deliver a message that they don't want the body to be buried in South Africa. When the message was very clear, as government, we have no say on these matters. The final say has to come from the family because that's what the law provides in South Africa. Purely to encourage the government here in Zambia to say, you have to up your game in terms of your negotiations and engagement with the family or whoever is involved so that you can resolve these matters, because otherwise the law in South Africa is very clear. But they played to the gallery and said, no, the South African government has, through the minister, told us this is a position. It had to take the same minister to clarify. That's not the reason why I came. What I came to say is that the law in Zambia is like this. When President Lungu, President HH is embarrassed, we are all embarrassed. You understand? You remember the Ukraine-Russia, saga? Everybody advised, don't go and take sides. We are non-aligned. Out of excitement to try and appease Biden. A matter that doesn't even concern you. It doesn't benefit you. It neither adds or subtracts anything from you. You are a small country here in SADC. You want to start becoming a champion over matters and their interests you don't even fully comprehend. You go and say, I'm going to. He was advised even by those who were officers at the embassy in Washington at the time. Okay? That the route we should take is to take the route that traditional Zambia has taken. We're non-aligned when it comes to, because it will elevate us to a place where we can engage Ukraine, you can engage Russia, we can engage America to reason with them around how to resolve this war situation. The moment you take a side, then you lose locus on how to resolve these issues. And that is unfortunately what what has happened. You were talking of the U.S. that I'm being harsh. The U.S. through the ambassador here made pronouncements that from their own investigations and analysis, there is abuse of the American taxpayers' money that is being offered for help, especially in the health sector. And they say from Gonzalez, whitewashes Aimbe's pronouncements. But what is that, speaking to and affecting our diplomatic relations? There are certain things that we expect a government, when they come out, the government retreats, engaged into quiet diplomacy. They understand and comprehend the subject. By the time they are making a pronouncement, they are not making an emotional pronouncement, or they are not engaged in political rhetoric, because they are preoccupied on how they are perceived by Zambians.
I understand your point. I understand your point. It's very valid. My question was are we not being harsh, the fact that we're ignoring the policy shift in the USA as far as immigration is concerned, as far as relation is concerned, as far as them giving aid? They had this whole department Dodge created to make sure that they're spending their money and they're spending it where American people are benefiting. So that's what my question was derived from. Are we really being fair are we really being fair with ourselves by judging ourselves that harshly after knowing the fact that there's a policy shift in the USA? That's where my question was derived.
The UPND are being harsh against the Zambian people by creating these problems because of mishandling of our relationship, traditional as they have been for many years. They are being harsh against the Zambian people. Normally, we would not be having these challenges, whether it was during Michael Sata's, Edgar Chagalungu's time, Michael Sata's time. I remember one particular incident during Michael Sata. I think we have to also be honest about some of these things. George Bush came, he as a former president, remember? Mm-hmm. And at the airport, President Sata said, Imwe, you are the ones who, who colonized us. Okay? It was like a joke. But because it was not expected to come from a head of state without having verified facts, because America never got involved in, colonialism and so on, it was an off statement as a joke. But as it were, Zambians, the international community, and others felt that it was a misplaced statement. And from that point, President Sata retreated and said, oops, it was just, in jest. You understand? Misaka in the Ichilema was dancing, he criticized Mr. Sata. But that was the end of the story. Mr. Sata in opposition used to call Chinese investors. When he became president, he realized that what I was saying on the anti-as opposition can't be said now that I'm head of state. He called the very people he was calling investors and had meetings with them in the interest of the Zambia-China relation. You understand what I'm saying? That's how, the distinction is drawn between political rhetoric and the reality of office. After all, there is no school that teaches you how to be a president. You may be schooled in politics. You may be schooled in governance, having been minister, having been MP and all these portfolios. But everyone who ends up in that office called presidency must be humble enough, teachable enough to be able to be taught the etiquettes and the governance of a country at that level. You go there as a student. The attitude of Mr. Aka in the Ichilema is that in his mind he thought that what he was doing at his farm, he can just transfer and put it in the state house. That's how come we're having these shockwaves. Because as far as this is concerned, it's the alpha and omega.
I want to throw some numbers at you regarding what's going on now. We did get the FIC report released yesterday, Mr. Nakacinda. During the period under review, the Financial Intelligence Center detected suspected illicit financial flows worth $3.5 billion US. Now, this is according to the 10th Money Laundering and Terrorism Financing Trends report of 2024. What's your comment, and what are the comparisons with the FIC reports under your administration as PF?
I think under PF, you could properly term it as maybe illicit flows, because obviously society and government and so on may not be seamless. There will always be elements where challenges in relation to integrity may come. But under UPND, these illicit flows, as reported not only now, 2023, the exponential increase, the rapid increase is totally abnormal, my brother. It's abnormal. This is not even about theft or corruption. This is economic sabotage. This is a confirmation that in 2021's election, we conducted a scandalous, decision of having political mafias end up in government. Because there's no way that the kind of money that is leaving this country would leave, whether it's in, as they say in West Africa and other places, in Ukwabag, or whatever method, whether it's transfers, bank transfers and so on, that this kind of money, billions of kwachas, billions of dollars, would leave this country without the knowledge of the powers that be. It's impossible. It's impossible.
There's been a highlight in this report of 2024 where the private sector is mainly highlighted, and it seems that there's a lot of money now that's being shipped off to offshore accounts in this current trends report. What's your take on that? And obviously you've highlighted the issue to do with how easy it is to get money in and money out into the country. What would you suggest we do to make sure that we have a watertight, somewhat of a system that will help the country in the long run to help curb these illicit financial flows?
Okay, first of all, we have to accept that the what is happening is basically state organized crime. You understand? Because it's not an innocent occurrence. Let's start from there. And it will help for us to start finding, solutions. When you look at the reports from 2023 to 4 months ago, because the report which you are referring to now is basically a report, yes, finalized and released, 6 months later. But remember, there's a period to which the figures have to be verified and all those things before you can then release an official, report. When you remove the time for the bureaucracy to be concluded, this is basically money, lost within 4 months. Now, we can stretch it to 2023. Up to now, the loss is to a tune of over 140 billion kwacha. 140 billion kwacha. Misaka Inje Ichirema has been running around